Simple action they've waited months to do. Shops flipping the sign, shoppers finding a line to stand in for a variety of reasons.
I want a refund.
I just want to get back into shopping again. And be around people as well and just get back to what it used to feel like.
Woo! From shopping cheers to snow-top beers, plummeting temperatures being the last thing to stop them from a pint.
Would you like any prawn crackers?
For many though, today wasn't just about reopenings, but reunions. Like me with my barber Alex.
How are we doing, buddy? I'm good, you?
Today, and for many more, Alex is fully booked, which is much needed after 4 months of being shut.
So keep a little bit of length on top, but blend it in through the right parts.
And as he slipped through the cracks of government help, those months have been spent working at Tesco.
When you're doing this Tesco's job, you're walking around and you're thinking a lot, and you're thinking, do I really want to be doing this? I want to just be cutting hair, really. So that someone else that needs this job more than me could be doing a better job than what I'm doing. Yeah. You know what I mean? So
today is about kick-starting an economy that shrank by just under 10% last year. An economy that's an interlinked ecosystem reliant on us spending, which we haven't been doing locked away at home.
I've been literally living in the same set of clothes for like the last year now. So I bought some new clothes for this week, a couple of weeks back, knowing that I was coming back to work.
That increased spending is what all these shops in Brentwood, Essex are hoping for on the first day non-essential retail has been allowed to open in England and Wales.
How have sales been this morning?
They've been nice and steady, we've had a good flow, and yeah, the energy's high, so it's nice.
It's a relief.
It's a big relief, yeah, we've been opened and closed so many times, and as a brand new business, we fell through so many of the cracks in terms of support, so yeah, it's been really, really tough this last year.
Lockdown has led many to rethink the way they do business. But for even the ones that have embraced online and prospered, there's no substitute to getting the doors back open.
If you've survived lockdown, you will survive anything. And we've actually had a really good year.
Okay, that's good to hear. Yeah. But how important, though, is actually having people coming through the door?
Oh, you can't beat it, because you have that conversation and, you know, to be able to choose books. And even selfishly for me, it's lonely.
Retail, though, is a collective endeavour, and it's not enough for one shop alone to be doing well.
How important for you is the rest of the high street doing well?
Hugely important, because if you have a high street that's not working, then people aren't going to come and have a mooch around everywhere else. You want the rest of the town to thrive as well. You can't do well long term if your town has nothing else to offer.
And the high street that reopens today is one which looks very different to a year ago. Many big brands have gone bust. One retail analyst estimates 190,000 jobs lost.
So shoppers have returned, which is what the economy desperately needs. But while the high street's busy, it's nowhere near as busy as it once was, according to shopping analyst Springboard. Compared to this same Monday, 2 years ago, pre-COVID, footfall is down 35%. The grand reopening isn't quite clear-cut though.
Put it down, buddy, yeah.
While this pub in Huddersfield could open at midnight, 2/3 of pubs lack outdoor space according to UK Hospitality, so they remain closed. And while gyms can open, exercise classes can't until May 17th in England, which is a problem if that's all your gym does.
As a class-based, every individual uses their own station, their own equipment, which is wiped down after. It's cleaned. So yeah, it's very unfair that a normal gym can have so many sweaty people training and a class-based gym can't. We need to be open to survive. It's like, you know, every local business at the moment, everyone needs to be open. So it's great that everyone's opening up, but we need our time as well.
Say it quietly and cautiously, so far the government's roadmap to recovery is unfolding on time. A roadmap that aims to have the economy fully reopened by mid-June. But if this pandemic has taught us anything, it's that a lot can change in just 2 months.
Paul McNamara reporting with less hair on his head than when the day began. Well, pubs across the country have certainly been busy today, and our North of England correspondent Claire Fallon is at one outdoor venue, Manchester. Claire.
I am, and this is night one of pubs, or I guess more accurately, night one of beer gardens, because for the next month and a bit, pubs are an outdoor-only activity, even though, to be honest with you, the temperature is more suited to big roaring fires and cosy nooks. It does also mean that very many pubs have not reopened today because they don't have the outdoor space for it to be financially viable. But that's not the case here This is a big old Victorian rail depot. In the outside area alone, they've got enough space for about 500 people, even with social distancing. But it's not your traditional pub experience because tables are pre-booked in 2-hour slots. When you get here, food and drinks are ordered to your table with a phone app and a code. There's no mingling with people from different tables, no going to the bar yourself, definitely no dancing beyond maybe a bit of a shoulder shuffle while you're sitting at your table. But all the same, people we've spoken to today are frankly delirious to be having a drink and meeting their mates. How much have you missed pubs?
So much. A lot. Like the most, I think. Yeah, it's like your social place to go, isn't it? And like we thought it would be like the only people in a pub garden on our own, and then realised the whole of the town is so busy. So it's gonna be a big party, I think.
Yeah, when I booked it, I just envisioned us to like in a beer garden by ourselves in the rain. Turns out the whole of Manchester's out.
What do you imagine it's going to be like in town by like 10 o'clock tonight?
I think it's going to be mental. I think there'll be a lot of drunk people about, but I'm excited. Like, it's nice to just see people, like, because you obviously only seen the people that you live with for so long, so it's just nice to see them. And everyone looks so happy as well.
Yeah, looking forward to the pubs actually properly opening. That'll be a big one, and then getting abroad and getting on holiday. So looking forward to that.
It's great. I mean, you know, sunshine, which is obviously rare, and day one. No, it's brilliant. It's finally, you know, the beginnings, kind of the baby steps back to life again. It's about doing things right, slowly. There's the excitement, and it's brilliant, but we've got to do it right.
Well, we heard one of the owners of this place there talking about the need for this unlock to be slow and cautious. And bear in mind, last summer when we unlocked, the case rate in this area was higher than it was in many other parts of the country, and within 1 month there was a local lockdown. So I think there will be some nervousness about the possibility of the case rate going up in some areas. But of course the big difference this time is that the vast majority of people who are most vulnerable to COVID-19 have been vaccinated, and so the hope is this will be our final unlock.
Claire Fallon in Manchester. Now, COVID vaccines could be offered to people aged over 40 as early as this week, according to one NHS official. And doses of the Moderna vaccine may also begin to be rolled out in England. The latest 24-hour government figures show 69,000 people received their first dose of the COVID vaccine yesterday. Almost 190,000 people have had their second dose. Almost 32,200,000 people have now received their first dose of a vaccine, while more than 7.5 million people are fully vaccinated. A further 13 people are reported, very sadly, to have died with COVID, bringing the UK total to 127,100. And there have been another 3,500 new cases in the United Kingdom. But with shops and pubs reopening today, what are the scientists saying? Our health and social care editor, Victoria MacDonald, is in the newsroom. Victoria.
Well, I think, John, some of us are looking forward to a haircut slightly more than a pub garden, but this, of course, is a long-awaited day. Step one of the unlocking in England, with Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, as you've heard, all doing things slightly differently. But wherever you are, the message from the scientists, from the advisors to the government, is that we must proceed with caution. The number of people being hospitalised has fallen dramatically. It's amazing to see that how that line's gone down. But the fall in infection rates appears to have flattened slightly. And of course, there are concerns over the variants and how they will behave. Also, that R number, the reproduction number, is between 0.7 and 1, depending on where you are in the country. And that gives less room for manoeuvre than I think many of those health officials would have liked. So the mantra remains data, not dates, for determining each of these next phases of this unlocking. Those advisors saying there needs to be enough time between each of those phases so you can react if they rise too much. Though you saw those figures on the vaccines, and they will obviously help.
Well, joining us now is Julie Abraham. She's Chief Executive of Richer Sounds, the home entertainment retailer with shops across the country, and Mariana Mazzucato, an economist who's written about recovery from the pandemic. Let me start with you, Julie Abraham. What sort of day have you had today? Do you know?
Yes, we've had a very good day in the shops today. We feel there's been a lot of pent-up demand of people actually just waiting for the shops to reopen so they can come in for demonstrations and to look at the product and just get out of the house.
I suppose
so we're quietly confident.
I suppose the difficulty is whether people will have much money to go further than the first burst.
That is a concern, but and sadly that's going to be true for a lot of people. As your previous piece said, there's been 190,000 jobs lost in retail, but equally there's a lot of people that haven't been able to go out to the pubs on holidays and go shopping for the last 12 months. So there could be some pent-up spending in there, and that could last a while. People aren't going to be able to travel abroad easily this year. So with staycationing and a lot of people doing houses up, we hope from our particular sector that we may benefit from that.
Mariana Mazzucato, how do you read the actual recovery of the pandemic? I mean, a quick burst at the front and then just sort of slightly slide off, or what?
Well, it depends. I mean, if you think about the macroeconomic context, we have interest rates which are, remain at rock bottom levels. We have a stimulus program. Like many other countries, they differ, but there is a fiscal stimulus, unlike in other periods. The recent history of the UK was one more of austerity. And we also have savings that have been accumulated and now can, in theory, be unlocked to spend. But what we really need to be asking ourselves is the shape of the recovery. We don't want to bounce back to the same old economy that we had, which was, filled with both inequality, a financialized corporate sector, and also a lot of, the problem with the financial sector itself, where a lot of the finance ended up back into the financial sector. We have to ask how long this recovery will last. Is it just a short-term blip, or is it a long-run recovery? And we also need to ask who will benefit. And on the last point, if we just even look at the savings, like this famous pot of savings that's out there to spend, most of that is actually currently in middle and higher income households, which actually have a lower propensity to spend. So those who've been hit hardest in this health pandemic are those that actually haven't had this massive, savings pool that has increased. So we have to really be very careful. And the other thing is, in some countries, for example, in France, the recovery itself has tried to design a kind of social compact with business. So, for example, both Air France and Renault, their own recovery, the recovery funds they had access to, were actually conditional on them lowering or committing to lower their carbon emissions. In this country, we haven't done that. We've given kind of big bailouts to companies like EasyJet, no conditions attached. So this idea of building back better, the slogan that's out there, we really need to ask ourselves, how can we design within the system a true building back better so that the poorest, people actually have higher incomes, but also that we get a better economy, a more sustainable and a more inclusive economy. Right.
Well, Julie Abraham, I could see you nodding quite enthusiastically at the beginning of the professor's outline of what was going on. But I'm just wondering, I mean, in the long term, can you keep as many branches as you have now? Are you expecting the business to contract a bit, or are you actually thinking we're going to be steady as she goes?
I'd like to think we're going to be steady. We've weathered all sorts of storms in the past. We have closed one store. We have no plans to close any others. I do feel we've got a bit of a niche product where people do want to see it and try it and look at it before they take it home. So I think that plays to our strengths. But I think I'd like to see a steady return to normal, and a steady return to business, and hopefully with the people going back to the high street and getting out of their houses, we will be able to survive in the long run. And I've got every confidence that we'll be able to do that.
It's presumably quite useful for you, for England, to have a little bit of a front run at this, and then to pick up the other bits of Britain.
Yes, it gives us a good test, but I think England have done a phenomenal job on the government have done a phenomenal job on their support so far, and the rollout of the vaccine programme has been nothing short of amazing. So that's certainly helped us, and we'll be ready to open in Scotland and Wales as soon as we're allowed to.
Has shopping gone online to such an extent that it won't be coming back?
Well, we saw in the between lockdown 1 and lockdown 2, it was 80-20 in favour of the shops before the pandemic. And as soon as lockdown 1 started, it was in the opposite direction. By the time we got to November, just before the second lockdown, we were back to about 70-30 in favour of the shops. Interestingly, today I saw our numbers, and again, it was 70% in favour of the shops. Now, I think that's going to be a little bit short term. I think it will be a slower burn and take a bit of time to build. I don't think we'll be going back to the 80-20 split of before, but I'd certainly like to get back to 70% to the stores and 30%, not just online, but we have telesales as well. So we call them the non-retail departments.
And just in the last 20 seconds, Professor Mazzucato, are we going to go back to where we were before, or are we going to be in a different place from then on?
I think we always need to ask ourselves the big question about long-term growth. What do we know that actually determines that? So just the fact that we've actually just halved the science research budget for universities, leaving a £2 billion hole in the research funding overall, that's a huge problem. That specific factor is a key driver of productivity and long-term growth. And you could look across the board and ask ourselves how Brexit, by the way, is going to affect all this. It's not only that Brexit lowers a business investment, which it does, because what investment is driven by is the perception of future market opportunities, and the size of our market has just fallen immensely. Right. Also the pots of money from the European Investment Bank, the Horizon program in Europe, and so on. This does leave actually an investment, a long-term investment hole, and that's what drives long-term GDP.
Mariana Mazzucato, Julie Abraham, thank you both very warmly for joining us.